Education as therapy. I shit you not, people. Education as therapy. Hello.
Hello.
What's up, everybody? This is Alvin Louie and Jennifer McWilliams from Courage is a Habit. We are starting a series that's going to be very different than what we are used to doing. So there's this book that Jen had found, actually, like 3 years ago.
Yeah, like 3 years ago.
So this book is called Child Abuse in the Classroom by Phyllis Schlafly. And this is from 1984. This book contains testimonies from hundreds of parents back in 1984. And when you read these testimonies, you could swear they were written today. And so we're going to do a series of videos reading from these testimonies. But before we get to that, we want to just set the tone of what this book is. So there's a foreword, but it's several pages, so we're not going to read everything. We're just going to read parts of it, just enough for you to understand why this book shocked the heck out of us.
So a remarkable real-life drama took place in 7 American cities during March 1984. Hundreds of parents traveled to one of the 7 locations to testify at the United States Department of Education hearings on proposed regulations for the protection of pupil rights amendment. More than 1,300 pages of testimony were recorded by court reporters as parents, public school teachers, and interested citizens spelled out their eyewitness accounts of the psychological abuse of children in the public schools. They related how classroom courses have confused school children about life, about standards of behavior, about moral choices, about religious loyalties, and about relationships with parents and with peers. There is no good way to summarize the anger and disappointment expressed by these grieving parents about what is going on inside public schools today. Each testimony should be read itself to learn the specific facts of what has actually happened and to hear the authentic expressions of parental love overlaid with indignation at what is being done in the name of education. Sound familiar?
Yeah, does that sound familiar?
The testimonies, however, could be exerted to a readable length, and that is what we have done in this book. Always using the actual words of each witness, this book gives the highlights of the actual testimonies at the 7 hearings conducted in March 1984 by the United States Department of Education. These hearings explain how schools have alienated children from their parents, from traditional morality, such as the 10 Commandments, and from our American heritage. These hearings explain why children are so emotionally and morally confused and why they need to search for their identity.
That's insane.
These hearings, yep, does this ring a bell with anyone? These hearings explain what children have been doing in their classrooms instead of learning to read, write, spell, add, subtract, and the essentials of history, geography, and civics. These hearings explain how children learn in the school to be sexually active, take illegal drugs, repudiate their parents, and rationalize immoral and antisocial conduct when it feels good in a particular situation. These hearings speak with the thunderous voice of hundreds of parents who are angry at how their children have been emotionally, morally, and intellectually abused by psychological and behavioral experiments during classroom hours when the parents thought their children were being taught basic knowledge and skills. Parents are indignant at the way the educator change agents spending federal tax dollars have used children as guinea pigs for fads and experiments that have been substituted for real learning.
That last paragraph alone.
Yeah.
People are going to go, you're just making this up. This is right here in the book.
Yeah.
Right here. This is the book right here. Anybody can go. Well, actually, anybody can go find it. It's not that easy to find, but you can find it on eBay. That's where we got it.
Sounds like we're speaking today. We could have did this on a Courage After Dark and just talked exactly like this.
Yep. And when Jen found this book and she goes, you will not believe this. And I'm like, okay, what is that? And then she read a couple of the testimonies from me. I was so blown away. I could not believe that these were parents in the early 1980s. Let me read this one other section on the forward. And then Jen, you can explain how these parents who nobody knew about, how we actually had we had them to thank for why people like you and me, when we went to public school, we didn't get nearly the indoctrination as the kids do today. So this is on page 13, or it could be 14. It depends on what version you have of the book, but education as therapy. I shit you not, people. Education as therapy. In the foreword, these hearings provide page after page of documentations for the foresightedness of former educator and U.S. Senator Samuel Hawakakwa, I'm probably pronounced that terribly, who warned the Senate in 1978 that the schools have become vehicles for a hearsay that rejects the idea of education as the acquisition of knowledge and skills, and instead regards the fundamental task in education as therapy. He said that such inquiring into attitudes, beliefs, and psychic and emotional problems is a serious invasion of privacy. This hearsay is what has resulted in the schools replacing cognitive education, which addresses the child's intellect and teaches knowledge and skills, with affective education, which addresses a child's feelings and attitudes and spends classroom time on psychological games and probing personal questionnaires.
Yes.
Wild. In practice, this therapy education is a system of changing the child's values by techniques such as attitude questionnaires, which dig into the privacy of the child and his family, psychological games in the classroom, and forcing the child to make adult decisions about such matters as suicide and murder, marriage and divorce, abortion and adoption. Or in our case, ICE.
Mm-hmm.
Therapy techniques used in the classroom include violent and disturbing books and films, materials dealing with parental conflict, death, drugs, mental illness, despair, and anger. Literature that is mostly negative and depressing, requiring the child to engage in the role-playing of death, pregnancy, abortion, divorce, hate, anger, and suicide. Personal attitude surveys and games such as Magic Circle, which is what we call today. What do you guys call what do we call the SEL circles? There's a lot of names for them.
Yeah, the community circles.
Community circles, yeah. Which invade the private thoughts of the child and his family. Psychological games which force a child to decide who should be killed. Explicit and pornographic instruction in sex acts, legal and illegal, moral and immoral. And a deliberate attempt to make the child reject the values of his parents and his religion. The jargon that they use to try to hide things from parents includes value clarification, behavior modification, moral reasoning, decision-making, higher order critical thinking skills, and humanism. These phrases identify therapy techniques which are generally integrated throughout the school curriculum, but are especially evident in courses such as sex education, death education, drug education, family living, parenting, citizenship and character education, global education, and talented and gifted programs.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly what we base all of our work on, because this is what is happening today in your system. Values clarification,
character education.
This is social emotional learning.
Yep.
Is what this
before there was social emotional learning.
That's right. Before, so this is social emotional learning. The sexuality is the comprehensive sex ed, so on and so forth. Everything that we consistently talk to everyone about. So
pornography in schools that they say is not happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's been happening since 1980, but it's not happening.
Right.
But these parents that came together and did this, what was the result of this?
Okay. So this is important for everyone to understand as we go forward with the series, because what they were complaining about was this invasion of privacy on their children. And just for some context, in 1978, when there was a lot of noise made about what was going on, our Congress did include to the General Education Provisions Act, the PPRA, which is Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment. However, what they did not have at the time was any type of consequences for any schools that violated the PPRA Act, which is also known as the Hatch Amendment. So when these hearings went on, this is what they were really complaining about in 1984. They were saying, we are supposed to be protected from this. The schools are violating it. And we have nothing we can, there's no one that we can tell, there's nowhere to report this. Yeah. So as a result of these hearings, they did then add in regulations so that if a school was violating PPRA, they had a place to report it, and there would be consequences to the schools if they continued to do so. PPRA says that you cannot ask a student anything specifically about these 8 categories unless you have parental consent. Political affiliations, mental and psychological problems, sex behavior or attitudes, illegal, antisocial, and self-incriminating behavior, critical appraisals of members of their child's family, so complaining about their family, privileged relationships such as lawyers, physicians, and ministers, what's going on with their relationship with them, their income, and I think that's 7. I think there's 8 today, but so basically you cannot ask children any of these questions without parental consent. However, they are getting around that today by using things like social emotional learning surveys. They avoid certain words. They don't say what's your political affiliation, what is your family practice as far as your religion, but they are able to gather that information through seemingly innocuous questions in the surveys of SEL.
So they can ascertain if your family is supporting ridiculous transgender ideology, or if your family is more conservative or whatnot. They can ascertain that very easily through the surveys.
Right. So today they're getting around this. However, in 1984, these parents went to bat for all of us. Honestly, today, even that they're still on the books. We should be able to report this. There should be violations. There should be consequences, but there's not because of the way that they are skirting around it.
So these folks did all this work, which is why the schools that we went to didn't have nearly the kind of indoctrination that we're seeing today. So with this in place, how is it that schools are using social emotional learning? And then how is that data being weaponized back into the schools so that it drove the schools to the version that we see today? What happened between them and when social emotional learning came in around 2010, 2011, 2012?
Mm-hmm. All right. So like we were saying, that the SEL surveys are the way to usurp the PPRA protections and regulations that we have because of what these parents did in 1984. And so they're still gathering this type of information, but what are they doing with it? Well, in 2011, the Obama administration, through the Department of Education, set new policy regulations for student privacy. And what they did through these regulations was that they said, well, FERPA is supposed to protect your child's education records. But the Obama administration changed it to say that, yes, we're going to protect your child's education records, which would include this personal information that they are gathering through these surveys. However, schools can designate authorized representatives, and those authorized representatives for the schools can be anyone that is under the guise of a researcher, contractor, or community partners. So
like an SEL vendor.
Mm-hmm. So while parents think that their child's data is being protected, yeah, your neighbor can't go in there and ask for your child's education records. But what is your neighbor going to do with them? Instead, Obama made it so that all of that information now can be shared with all of these companies or organizations or places that they get grant money. That information goes to them. And then what do those businesses or organizations do? They gather that data, and then they come back around and they say, well, we saw that through the data, it does look like your school system is racist, or you're not friendly to transgender children. So here is a way that you need to shift your policies and help provide a safe and welcoming place. So all of this data is happening. It's happening on a much grander scale than even in 1984. Those parents were just concerned about, the changes that teachers were making in the classrooms. But now we're giving this information as authorized representatives to whoever your school designates to be that. And that would include your social emotional learning programs, the initiatives that come in to work with children for restorative justice, so on and so forth.
Got it. For people who try to argue to say it's not happening, obviously they're lying, trying to gaslight you, or even people who are not degenerates, like it's not happening people who genuinely believe that it's just a bad teacher or just a one-off, or, oh, it's not happening in red states or red county. This tells you, this right here blows all that out the water. Mm-hmm. It's even deeper than what, before Jen found this book, even we didn't understand it went back this far. I mean, we knew that the education system, who they base it on, is Marxist. We knew that. We understand that. The Horace Mann and the Dewey and all those guys. But to see the testimony be this specific was really shocking. And this is why we're doing this series. We're going to do, one testimony at a time and get through this book. But I think it's so important that parents and Americans in general, whether you have kids or not, understand just, Jen says this all the time, what a national security issue that K through 12 education is. So I hope you enjoyed the series because we really want people to understand what kind of system you're sending your kids to.